This is Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams, where differing opinions are not only accepted, they're encouraged.
All right, Rondi, we are live. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me on here.
And
it's good to be alive, isn't it?
It is. And you said you're recording this right next to the Pacific Ocean. Is that correct?
I am. If you listen closely, you can probably hear the waves crashing onto the rocks on the beach here in La Jolla.
Okay. You live in Nevada, right?
I actually live in Boise, Idaho, and Florida.
Oh.
And then I have an office in a home in Boise, one in Stuart, Florida, one in Las Vegas, and then one here in La Jolla, California. So I spend my time in hotel rooms and then in between, depending on the time of the year. So right now I'm in La Jolla.
I didn't know you had a house in Stuart. So that's near Port St. Lucie, right?
It is. Yeah. It's, it's borders Port St. Lucie. Yep.
Okay. That's where the Mets play. That's the only reason. I'm not even a Mets fan. I'm a Braves fan, but I just know spring training baseball. So that's why I know where that's at. I don't know if I've ever spent too much time. But anyway, I have a few things I want to get to with you. I'm really excited about this. Before we do, you're wearing the Fortress University shirt. I have some suspicions what that is, but tell me what you're up to with that, because I know that's a new project for you.
You bet. 14 years ago, I started Fortress Credit Pro, which was America's first paid-on-results credit repair companies. And shortly after starting that, I realized that most people who hire me to fix their credit got in that situation because they don't understand money, credit, and taxes or investments. They just don't understand money in general. We are purposely, in my opinion, not taught anything about personal finances because the powers to be, our government, they don't want us to know about money. They don't want us to understand it. And they just want us to go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a good job, pay into the system. And so what I found out when I was fixing people's credit was they didn't know anything about money or credit. And 65%, Jeremy, of people's credit scores are things other than payment history. And everybody thinks it's all about your late payments and your payment history that impact the credit score. That's only 35% of it. So inside of Fortress Credit Pro, we were a credit repair company that offered education. And people really like the education side. So we have transitioned to an education platform that offers credit repair. And so we educate people about credit, taxes, money, investments, and we will fix their credit for free if they need it. So that's the new fun project that I'm working on. I've been working on it for years. It does go live. It actually goes live June 1st. So I'm not sure when this broadcast will be promoted. Maybe it'll already be live. But fortressuniversity.com goes live June 1st. And it's really cool. So there's 25 different courses in there, ranging from how to manage your money, how to increase your credit score, how to legally pay zero income taxes, how to drive a Ferrari for the cost of a new Camry, how to invest in real estate, how to get started with multifamily real estate. We have a course in there about crypto.
Let's talk about the Ferrari. I actually want to talk to you about how the school system could train us better on money, because I completely agree with that, but I want to get your deeper opinion on that. But let's go into this Camry Ferrari thing as well as the low income tax, because I obviously just paid my taxes for the year, and that's obviously a challenging time for me as an entrepreneur. It's one of my least favorite times of the year, but I want to talk about both of those things. So how do you get a Ferrari for the price of a Camry? I've seen you talk about that before.
Yeah. So the way exotic cars work and luxury cars, primarily exotic cars, is they start out very, very high, and then they depreciate extremely fast. And then they hit a certain point where they don't really depreciate anymore. And it's certain cars, not all exotic cars, but certain cars. So for example, the Ferrari that I own, currently right now it's about an $800,000 car if you went out and bought it new. When I bought it 3 years ago, I paid $147,000. So went from here to there. I've driven it now 3 years. I could sell it today for probably what I paid for, if not a little bit more. So when I say that you can drive a Ferrari for the cost of a Camry, if you go in and buy a brand new Camry, it's $50,000, $60,000. The moment you drive off the lot, it's worth less money. And in 5 years, that car will be worth a fraction of what you paid for it. If you buy the exotic cars, the right model, the right color, the right options, and you understand what the right color, the right model and options are, you can drive that car essentially for free or at no cost or little to no cost. And so we call it car hacking. And you can buy Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royce. For example, the Wraith. I don't know if you've ever been in a Wraith. They're amazing cars. The Wraith has been about $145,000 to $155,000 for the last 3 years in a row. And it's really not much cheaper. And you would be very, very hard pressed to find a Rolls Royce Wraith under $145,000.
What year are you talking about for $150,000?
On a Wraith?
Yeah.
2015s, 2014s. They haven't been around very long. A Bentley Continental and my other exotic cars, same thing. Started around $500,000. I bought it for $105,000. I've had it now since 2018, so 3 years. I could sell it for probably around $95,000. So I lost $10,000 in 3 years. Camry would have lost a lot more than $10,000 in 3 years. So that's what I mean by it. Now, can you drive it and put 50,000 miles a year on it? No. These are extra cars. And so you'd be driving it 3,000 to 5,000 miles a year because it's an extra car. And it's not that you can't drive it. It's just the more miles you put on these cars, obviously, the less value it has, just because of car dings and road rash and other stuff that happens. It's not the engines that go out. It's the cosmetic part of it.
So I don't know if it matters, and I know a lot of these exotic cars, even ones that are 5 years old, you can still lease them, which is unique to that industry, right? So do you lease them or finance them, or what do you do for those 5, 6 year old exotic cars?
Yeah, I buy them. And the reason why is leasing is the most expensive way to purchase a car. Leasing is you're just paying the depreciation. So if you bought if you leased a 5-year-old Ferrari, you're going to essentially lose money on that Ferrari because you're leasing it. And why most people will lease is because they were told that leases are 100% tax deductible. That's partially true. Partially true because it caps out at $18,000. And you'd be hard pressed to find a 5-year-old exotic car for, $1,500 or less a month. And so what happens is you hit the 18,000 mark, your CPA actually adds everything else back in as income, and then you end up paying taxes on it anyway. So what I choose to do is purchase it through a business loan or business line of credit. So it doesn't show up on my personal credit report, so I can flip cars on a regular basis without impacting my credit score. And that's why I like the line of credit. You write a check, you get the car, you drive it for 3 months to 6, 9, whatever. And then when you sell it, you just pay off the line of credit. It doesn't impact the personal credit score. And you still get to depreciate that car just like you leased it. So you can write off miles, which you're not going to want to write off miles because you're not driving it very much. You can write off interest, so you can write off the actual cost. And if you write off the interest, you can also depreciate it. And essentially what you're doing with a lease is you're writing off the depreciation up to $18,000. Now, here's the cool thing with depreciation. You can write off the amount of depreciation based on what the IRS code is. That doesn't mean the car is actually depreciating, just like with my apartment complexes. If you buy a $10 million apartment complex, sometimes you get to write off $10 million the day you buy that apartment complex. It didn't lose $10 million in value. You financed it. It's just the way our tax code is set up. And so with the cars, you can actually depreciate them, write off the depreciation amount, which then saves you in your taxes. So I choose to purchase versus lease.
Now, is that maybe just like an ignorant question, but say I just purchased this $150,000 car through my business. Is that whole 150 grand deductible like that year, or is it just the depreciation?
It depends on what vehicle you purchased. So if you bought the Rolls-Royce SUV, the Bentley SUV, the Lamborghini SUV, the Range Rover SUV, then the answer is yes. It is 100% write-off that day. Because if it has what's called the GVWR, gross vehicle weight ratio of 6,000 or more, which almost every SUV out there has it.
It's commercial?
No, it's not commercial. It just means it's rated for 6,000 pounds. And every single exotic vehicle that's an SUV is rated for 6,000. Doesn't mean you put 6,000 in it. It's just that's what the rating is. It's because of tax code section 179 allows you to write off up to $500,000 when you purchase a vehicle that's GVWR'd over 6,000 pounds.
Interesting. Okay.
And that, because here's what happens. Tax codes, 99% of all tax code is written to save you taxes. So I posted on this a week or so ago, and I'll probably mess up the numbers, but let's just, for the sake of this conversation, there's 4,000 pages of tax code. 20 of those pages have to do with raising taxes. 3,980 pages is about saving taxes or reducing your taxes. The government creates tax code to incentivize entrepreneurs to do what they want you to do. They want you to provide jobs. They want you to provide clean, affordable housing, and they want you to invest in energy. If you do those things, they will reward you. They also want you to spend money in the energy business and in the car business. And so what they will do is they say, if you buy this brand new truck, you get 100% write-off. If you buy this Rolls Royce, you get 100% write-off. They're wanting to stimulate the economy. So if you do what they want, you save on the taxes.
So that's interesting. How can we, because I have another question for you. How can we, and you actually do, I follow you, post some really good content regarding like taxes and stuff, because I have good credit, so the credit stuff isn't as applicable to me, but I have enjoyed your tax content, which is awesome. So maybe we can figure out a way where, as Max and I are growing in our businesses and stuff, I don't know if you can advise in some of these areas. But okay, so next thing, so we're growing our businesses. There's only so many deductions you can take. So, my taxes look like this at a high level. I paid myself, salary and distributions and blah, blah, blah. There's so many deductions for my holding company that, for business travel and, hotels and things like that, maxing out the 401k, just all that's typical stuff. So beyond that, what is like the most obvious thing that entrepreneurs should be doing to lower their tax liability other than the super obvious stuff?
Well, other than super obvious, that's not obvious. So what I see a lot is a lot of business owners do not have salaries. And because they don't have a salary, they are paying 18 to 20% more taxes than they're legally required to pay. So one of the very first things that I would recommend is that you actually incorporate so you don't have to pay self-employment tax, and you put yourself on a reasonable salary. That's all the IRS asks for, is a reasonable salary. When you do the reasonable salary, it allows you to do the 401k, which unless someone is contributing, like you're an employee, I don't recommend 401ks. Because you lose on 401ks. They're very expensive. You are kicking the can down the road. It's better off to pay the tax today than pay it later on when you're in a higher tax bracket. When you're on salary, instead of doing a 401k, you can do a SEP. Have you ever heard of a SEP IRA?
Yeah, I actually had a SEP a while, and I stopped contributing. And then now what we do is our main company, we take a reasonable salary through that, and then our company matches our own 401k distributions as well. It's because we offer to our employees as well, if that makes sense. So
yeah, and so that's where it's hard on the SEP is all employees have to get it. And so one of the things you can do is you start a new company, and the salary is larger in the new company. So maybe it's a management services, it's a marketing company for the other one. And with the 401k, you're limited to $18,000 to $19,000 a year. Well, a SEP is limited to $57,000 a year. So with the SEP, it is a tax deduction for the business. It goes into an IRA, which is then taxable, but you can immediately convert it to a Roth IRA. And so essentially it allows you to put $57,000 a year into your Roth IRA. And then you can take that money, which is self-directed, and you can buy pretty much anything you want as far as investments. You can buy real estate, which I don't necessarily recommend buying a tax deductible asset inside of an IRA. But I'd rather buy crypto and cars and other types of investments in other companies through your SEP Roth IRA. But back to the thing, some obvious things that people don't do. Adding your kids to salary. I know you have a little baby, don't you?
No, Max just had a baby.
Max
don't have a baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's hard when they're below 6 years old. But once they hit 6 years old, you put them on salary. You can pay your children up to $13,000 a year, tax deductible for the business, tax free for the child. And you could also add are your grandparents still around?
They are.
Okay. My grandmother, for example, was in a nursing home. Her Medicare, Medicaid, whatever it was, did not pay for all of her prescriptions. And so instead of me paying for her prescriptions, I put her on salary to log into my Facebook account and to answer messages that she could answer. And I gave her a list. You get the same questions over and over again. And so I put her on salary, $13,000 a year. So it was able for me to write it off. I gave it to her. She didn't have to pay taxes on it. And that's how I paid for her medical.
That first $13,000 for her is tax-free?
It is. It's 100% tax-free.
So your kids... Can it be kids, parents, grandparents? I mean, can it be basically everybody? Or like what's
it can be anyone that you support 51% of their income. So like my grandson is 10 years old. He's on salary. He goes into the office every day after school. He empties the trash. He vacuums the floors. He empties the dishwasher. He runs the shredder. He gets $500 a month. 100% tax deductible.
That's a great, that's
a simple thing.
Yeah,
it's a simple thing that people miss. And when it's your own children, your own family, you are exempt of your standard employee laws. The workman's comp, Social Security, unemployment insurance. You don't have to pay any of that stuff. Another thing that business owners will do, and this is a little bit more sophisticated, is I kind of talked about it a little bit ago, and that is setting up multiple companies. So when you set up a corporation, you get to choose when your tax year ends. So generally, people think of tax years ending December 31st. Well, you could set up one company ending December 31st, one ending June 30th. The company that ends in December can write a management check to the one that ends in June, and you transfer money from one account to the next. Now you have 6 months to spend that money. And in 6 months, you could literally spend it on another company. And you literally just keep pushing it down the road until you eventually spend the money. Because there are some things you're limited to how much you can spend a year. And so that's another strategy that you can use. Defined benefits, another one. And then if you're making a lot of money, captive insurance is phenomenal. You can take literally millions of dollars a year out of your main company, put it in a captive insurance policy. That money sits there. On the 13th month, you can start accessing that insurance. And because you're accessing it via insurance, it's 100% tax-free. So to kind of give you an example, our good friend Mike Theodore. Mike, for people that are watching or listening, he runs a software company that does Google ads, and he and you probably know more about this than I do, but the way I understand it is when you go to a web page and you see multiple different ads, he's running the software, and when you click on it, he gets paid. And Google changed their algorithm in October 2019, which cost him overnight about $300,000. So when I was fishing with him last year in Alaska on a business trip, by the way, because there's a group of us from VA that went to Alaska to go fishing, and then we did our business work afterwards, talking about business and collaborating and stuff. He got a text message, an email that his claim had paid. So he's super excited about it because he got like $386,000 of insurance claims through his own insurance company because Google had changed his algorithm. And so what happens is you put money into this insurance policy,
which is deductible.
Okay. There is no limit. So you put it in as an insurance deductible, and then you file claims when they come up against your own company. So because Google changed the algorithm, he lost money. He filed a claim. A year later, he got all that money tax-free. So unlike most insurance, you never want to file a claim. But when you own your own company, you want to file as many claims as you can. So this is a strategy. It's pretty advanced, but that's a strategy.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing I've learned about the IRS. Is there's just so much gray. It's like who is the IRS to say that like insurance company is different than like any other insurance company? Like I guess that's where it gets tricky, right? And that's where
in order to make that legal, Jeremy, you're not the only one that's in this pool. So what they do is they pull a bunch of companies into one. And so everybody's filing claims. And with the IRS agents are the second least educated people in taxes. You got H&R Block or Liberty Tax, those guys that just are tax preparers, your average companies. I'm not saying H&R Block is bad. I'm saying the employee is not necessarily educated on tax law. And then you have IRS agents, and then you have your enrolled agents and your CPAs and your big four tax companies that actually know tax law. But it is your responsibility as a U.S. citizen to understand tax code so you can pay less taxes, because you're not legally required to pay more than your fair share. You're legally required to pay taxes, but there's nothing saying you have to pay more than you have to. Just most people would rather clip coupons and try to save 30 cents instead of learning tax code to save $3,000.
So you mentioned something earlier, which I 1,000% agree, and I've been saying this for a long time. And by the way, I don't know if you ever read the book. It's like a newer book, but it's the title is "What the Fuck Does the Constitution Actually Say?" It's WTF Does the Constitution Actually Say? Which was a lot of. I feel like I'm somewhat knowledgeable with modern politics, but how many of us truly know the ins and outs of our Constitution? Not very many. And he said a very interesting stat at the beginning of the book, which was only 12% of U.S. public schools require during K through 12 you take a civics class, which is very ironic that only 12% of our school systems require that we learn about our government and how our democracy works in a democratic republic that we're in. So there's definitely something there, and I think there's a lot of accuracy to where there can be more control can be had when our population doesn't know how our government works, without a doubt. I mean, why else would we not? I never went through a civics class. We went through one. I think I went through like one economics class and like in high school. But why do you think the government doesn't want this stuff more knowledgeable? Is it for control? Is it so people just gladly have the money taken out of their check and don't ask questions? Like, why aren't we educated more on? And that's our democracy. Civics, by the way, like that's our democracy. But I think there's a lot of correlation between the two.
My personal opinion, the reason that they don't want us to know is for control. It's 100% for control, just like with what's going on with the masks. With COVID, there's no scientific proof whatsoever that masks will prevent you from getting COVID or prevent you from spreading COVID. The way that people wear masks today, right? I'm not saying masks don't work. I'm a retired fireman. We wore masks all the time when we went into areas that were contaminated, but we immediately threw the mask away. We immediately decontaminated everything. But they just don't want us to know, and they want to change the narrative when we start figuring things out. But I think it's because they want to keep you numb and dumb and just going along to get along so they can do what they want to do. I'm reading a great book right now called The Bitcoin Standard. Have you read that?
That sounds good, though. I'm going to add it to my wish list.
Phenomenal. I don't have very many regrets in life. I will tell you this. I regret not knowing about this book 4 years ago. I regret not understanding it, because if I would have known about this book 4 years ago, I'd be worth several $100 million right now because of what it is going over on how money really works. But our government doesn't want us to know about money and taxes because it's a way to control us. And they figured something out in the 1950s. So prior to 1950s, you paid your taxes at the end of the year, similar to an entrepreneur. And I don't know, do you pay your quarterly taxes? Do you quarterly?
I do end of the year.
Yeah, that's how I do it. I don't do quarterly. And you don't legally have to do quarterly. You don't legally have to pay taxes on your paycheck as an employee. So if you're paid weekly, biweekly, monthly, you don't legally have to pay them. They want you to pay them, which in the 1950s, they enacted that because what was happening was at the end of the year, people didn't have any money. And so the government's like, wait a minute, we need to take it out of their paycheck.
Which is genius if you're the government. Like whoever came up with that idea, like had to have gotten like a nice government bonus. Because it's a bunch of like normal people can barely manage their own bills as is, let alone try to pay taxes. So it's wild.
There is one of the questions I ask someone when I do first thing when we do a consultation is, how much tax did you pay last year? And it's surprising. Almost 100% of the time, Jeremy, they say, oh, I got a refund. I got $4,000 back. I didn't ask them how much did they get back. I said, how much tax did you pay last year? And so I'll say, how much tax did you pay last year? Oh, I got $4,000 back. I said, well, how much did you pay? Well, no, I got my money back. Did you get all of your money back? Well, no, but I got $4,000. So they don't even know how much they're paying in because it's gone. But legally, you can go in and claim exempt and pay zero throughout the entire year. And you can put that in an interest-bearing account. You can use that to pay down debt, which is one of the things that I teach, that if you got credit card debt, instead of giving that money to the IRS and letting them hold it for a year and then giving it back to you, take it, pay off your damn credit cards. And now you're making 21% or 29.99%. And then at the end of the year, pay what you owe. But most people won't do it that way. So I think, back to the original question, why do they do it? It's for control. They don't want you knowing. They don't want you educated, which is why they purposely do not teach you about money in school. Even in college, if you go get an MBA, they're not teaching you about money and credit. They're what you really need to know.
Is there anything, do you feel, that can be done to make that more prevalent in the public school system? Or do you think it's just going to take people like you and just educate like through private business?
I don't think there's anything we can do to change the public education system. Our public education system was developed based on Russia, based on communism, socialism, to get employees. So in the early 1900s, Rockefeller hired people from Russia to come in and teach us their education system. And that's how it came about, what we have today. And it's kind of evolved since then. There's a lot they don't teach us in our schooling system. So I think it's going to come down to people like me and others that are teaching people that want to learn and want to know. It's similar to the Matrix, the blue pill or the red pill. Most people want to stay blue pilled. They don't want to know what's going on.
One, I agree. I think it's almost in these humans' defense. It's a simpler, less stressful way to live life, to just kind of go in the motions, right? So it's like we're weirdos going out of the box and having these uncomfortable conversations and doing things that the rest of society won't. Back to the COVID mask thing, which, by the way, is there's tons of data that supports actually that typical masks that people wear, like the cloth masks or even the surgeon mask. There's no doubt they can prevent the spread of like droplets. Like there's no doubt if you sneeze, you're going to sneeze into your face and rather than like projectile. But there's lots of very smart people that have said like these masks do not stop the transmission of the like COVID virus because of the like whatever the molecule count, like the molecule being so small, it actually just goes right through the mask. And then if you look at tons of states that were very strict, and then if you look at, fortunately, like I'm in Florida, where like we were open and people could just like live their lives and make whatever decision was best for them, the data is really not that different. And then the mask culture here in Florida compared to California is much different, and if you just look at the data, it's really not that different from like a death standpoint and stuff. So and regardless, not saying there's not accuracy to both sides, but was really discerning to me, and I hope it was, I think it was discerning to people like you, and I hope it was discerning to a lot of the country, was the fact that the alternative viewpoint was getting shut down. Not that the alternative viewpoint was 100% accurate. Like there's CDC, even though it's very hard, you could probably find a few accurate things that they say, right? Like, not that the CDC isn't God, everything, and like these random doctors coming and disagreeing aren't God, but we should be allowed to have different perspectives from different professionals, and then just as citizens say, okay, I'm going to make an educated response based on all this information. And that was the scariest thing to me, was like, why are these things being censored when they were oftentimes very credible, educated doctors that had dedicated their whole lives to their craft? Like, isn't that scary that just an alternative viewpoint in the USA was fucking censored?
Absolutely. I mean, look at what DeSantis did this weekend with, creating the bill that allows us to sue, us Florida. I'm actually a Florida resident as well, but allows us Floridians to file lawsuits against big tech for censoring us. And we'll see what happens with that. I've been censored on social media. I got COVID back in January. I believe COVID's real. I fucking had it.
So did I.
It sucked, right? But I'm healthy. But the thing, last 9 years, I've suffered from Lyme disease. I've been in and out of the hospital every single year, in ICU for a week to 10 days every year with sepsis, pneumonia. I had a heart attack when I was 44 years old. I had a pulmonary embolism 3 years ago, all from Lyme disease. And I was afraid to get COVID because what the media was saying it would kill me. Well, it sucked, but I can tell you it wasn't as bad as having pneumonia or having sepsis or pulmonary embolism. But it did suck. I personally know, and very few people can say this, but I personally know 2 people that died from COVID. Overweight, diabetes, high blood pressure, and not a little bit overweight, massively overweight. And healthy people generally aren't getting it. And I think with the whole mask thing, I spent most of COVID in Idaho and Florida. Idaho was shut down like 3-4 weeks, maybe. The bars where I live were shut down like 2 weekends. And then they're like, hey, we're going out of business one way or the other. And we didn't have, just like in Florida, we just didn't have this craziness. So when I come to places like California, it's crazy seeing people surfing with masks on. I was supposed to go sailing on Friday, And the guy come out and said, you need to bring your vaccination paperwork and you have to wear your mask as well. And so I was like, I'm not going sailing. You know, if I can't go out on a sailboat in the freaking ocean without wearing a mask, I'm just not going to participate.
Anybody wearing a mask outside is a complete fucking idiot, and they're anti-science. Anti-science. Yeah, because there's like study after study after study. Not only does it not spread outside, which is 1A. 1B is that vitamin D builds your immune system and actually helps if you do transmit the virus. So the fact, like, wearing a mask outside, like, the amount of people that do that is what it does show is how easily humans can just do what other people do. Like, it's not, and the irony is that we're in 2021. There's so much access to information, more than we've ever had in human history. You can Google how it spreads. You can see, the viability of wearing a mask outside. I mean, fortunately, almost all the masks are gone in Florida, but it's pretty hot. I was just outside. I just got back from the pool. It's probably like 90 degrees as I'm recording this. There were literally some people wearing in 90 degree sweaty weather masks. So that's also unhealthy for them. They're covering up their breathing airways. Like, it's so insane that like, it's anti-science, and it's actually hurting their health in ways. Like, and this is normal. And so many. Do you think there's still going to be people wearing masks into 2022? Actually,
absolutely.
What percentage of people do you think? Because I believe there will be some people.
I think it depends on where you live. I think California, it's California, New York, and Chicago. I think you'll see that they'll just continue doing it. I think businesses will require it. For example, in Boise, where I live part of the year, H&M, which is a clothing store, is the only, that and Louis Vuitton or Lulu shorts, the yoga clothing, the shit that I don't buy. Those two clothing stores in the mall are the only ones that require masks. All of the rest, because it's an outdoor mall, nobody else requires masks but those two stores. And guess who's not in those stores?
You.
They don't have very many customers in there because they just don't want to go in.
So what is interesting now is there's roughly half the country, a lot of conservatives, and we could probably really dive deep into why this is. I don't think it's because a vast majority of people are like us. Like, I'm not a COVID conspiracist. Obviously, I agree COVID exists, right? But I think most, like, my mindset is there's so many things out there and there's so many things that can kill us. COVID, which is, like, I'm least concerned about that out of all the other things. And there's half the country that blatantly agrees with us. And then there's, like, another big chunk that, let's just, I don't know how many, but tens of millions of Americans that are just wearing the mask because everybody else is doing it. Mm-hmm. But I feel like everybody at this point knows it's fucking bullshit. And then there's that few small percentage that are genuinely scared, that, like, shame everybody else into wearing it when they're, like, in most cases, like, anti-science. And it's just wild how that few, like, I would say those corporate policies are from the silent, or the loud minority, the loud, very, very small minority.
And I think their pocketbooks, it'll show. And the other thing is, in 5 to 10 years, the people that, went in, got vaccinated, aren't going to have kids. They're already having heart attacks. They're already having all kind of issues. If you want to see some crazy stuff, there's a guy on Instagram that I follow, is DC_Drano. And he posted just last week about menstrual cycles. And normally you'll get 2 to 3 comments. He's got about 2 million people that follow him. He's got thousands. It was 700, and last time I looked, 745,000 comments from women about their menstrual cycles. And I'll give you a good example. My girlfriend, and this is 2 guys talking about women's menstrual cycles, but this is...
We'll do our best.
Yeah. My girlfriend has her period like clockwork the last week of the month. Like clockwork. 3 weeks ago, so in the beginning of the month, just a week or so after her period, my aunt shows up who's vaccinated, spent 1 day with us. The next day, my girlfriend started her period. And it went for a week. Then it stopped. A couple days later, my aunt come back and her menstrual cycle started the next day again. And it's 745,000 women have commented on this guy's page about this stuff. And then I don't know if you've seen the magnet thing where you've been vaccinated, they hang the magnet on their arm.
What?
Yeah. So if you go on TikTok and Instagram, there are literally videos of people taking a magnet, putting it on their arm, and it sticks to their arm where they got the vaccine. I don't know why, but it's happening. I said something this morning on our sales meeting, actually yesterday morning on our sales meeting. One of my employees went and got a magnet, stuck on her arm, and it stuck there. I don't know what the science is and why it's sticking, if there's that much metal in the vaccine. But
so what?
I know COVID's real.
I want to talk to you about the vaccine. Actually, I'm curious, your deeper thoughts. But I want to clarify: it's 2021, Ronnie. It's not. We're not two men. We're two living things that identify as male humans. So
hey, I identify as a vaccinated male.
Yeah, there you go. That's true. That's what I'm going to tell anybody that asks. So I'm not one that believes that the vaccine is, doing crazy shit. I know people that are like, I need to get this vaccine. I know the other extreme where they're like, I will never get the vaccine. I'm kind of in the middle where it's just like, I think if people want to get it, great. If people don't want to get it, they shouldn't be forced to. Yeah. I personally haven't got it. I personally don't plan on getting it. But I'm not one that thinks like there's crazy shit going on with the vaccine. With that being said, do you think that, let's just say what you're saying about the vaccine has truth to it? Is that intentional, or what do you believe it's intentional, or do you think it's just because it was rushed and not tested, or what if it's doing all these things? What would you think the motivation would be behind that?
I think it's both. I think it's intentional to neuter males and to limit females from having kids. And the reason I believe that is if you do a little research on Melinda and Bill Gates, there's multiple videos where they said, we need to create a vaccine to limit population growth. Both of them have said that multiple times. There's also videos of them saying that Bill and I had to have a conversation about how many people we really wanted to save. Because if we go into Africa, we provide water, we provide food, and it saves millions of lives, do we really want to save that many people? Because it's going to add to the population of the world. So I think there is some truth to they're purposely trying to limit our population. I think part of it is they rushed it. They are testing it. They're testing it on humans. It's the only vaccine to ever be tested on animals. Stopped testing on animals because it was killing too many animals. So then they went right to humans. I think it's a political thing. I mean, look at it. They're offering free donuts. United Airlines yesterday come out and said, we're going to give you free airfare for a year anywhere in the world to, it was like 12 people. Uber come out this morning and said, we'll give you free rides if you go out and get vaccinated. I think it's a political thing to push people in and control it. I've been vaccinated with lots of stuff through the military. When we got deployed, they put all kind of crap in me. And I can tell you from people that I know, like my daughter, who went to the hospital with sepsis. She's a diabetic. They forced her to do the vaccine. They were discharging her. And they said, before we let you go, you have to take the vaccine. She said, I don't want it. They said, we're not going to let you go. So they gave her the vaccine. She spent another 2 weeks in ICU. That's how sick she got from it. And I personally know lots of people have been vaccinated. They don't agree with me on things. And every single one of them got sick. And every single one of them had side effects. So I think it's censored. I think big tech is censoring how many people are getting sick from it. And this is not new, Jeremy, for our government. They did this back in the 50s with the Black Americans. They vaccinated them. They paid them to get vaccinated, and it caused sickle cell disease in blacks. I don't think it's new. I think it literally is a way to control and to limit population. And I think it's absolutely asinine for someone who's had COVID to get vaccinated. Because until they can prove that the vaccine's better than the antibodies that you and I already have, I'm not going to put something in my body to do it.
Well,
so, I'm not a scientist. I'm a retired paramedic.
Yeah.
That is now in credit. So, and here's the thing, just so people have some frame about my conspiracy theory, which is actually not conspiracy anymore. I was a third firefighter of the Columbine High School shooting. And at the high school, I was outside when they were shooting kids inside the high school. And we got a call that, and I was a brand new firefighter. So we got a call that a kid had sprained his ankle. And so our commanding officer said, you and Patrick, you guys go take care of this. We're going to stay here and take care of the real stuff. So they sent us away to this cul-de-sac. Patrick and I, two brand new firefighters. We pulled into the cul-de-sac in Littleton, Colorado, right next to the high school. It wasn't a sprained ankle. There were 13 kids laying in the cul-de-sac that had been shot, that had ran and been drugged out of the cafeteria. The call was, when we listened to it later, the lady had said, there are kids in my yard that have been shot. One is shot in the ankle, but it came across as a sprained ankle because there's complete chaos on the radio. Later on that day, I personally was in Klebold's house. I personally, on the bomb squad, was looking for bombs and defusing bombs. That entire high school was bombed. There were hundreds of bombs in that high school. There were dozens of cars in the parking lot that were bombed. Unfortunately, they didn't go off. The reason they didn't go off was, if you remember, there's that video of showing, I can't remember if it's Klebold or Harris, he's standing on the balcony shooting the propane tank in the cafeteria, and it's not going off. It was a bomb. On the propane tanks, they had those little alarm clocks with the bells, the ones that ding when they go off.
Yeah.
They had bought those at Walmart. The reason the bombs did not go off, hundreds of bombs did not go off, was because they bought the cheap alarm clocks that had plastic bells that were chromed to look like metal. So it never arced. That's why the bombs did not go off. I personally saw this, not rumors. I was personally there. You can Google Rondi Lambeth, Littleton fireman, and you will see my interviews of stuff. Later on that day, we were all sent home. This never happens in EMS. They don't send people home from this. They let you go through counseling, to hang out with your brothers and sisters in the fire department, to work through it. They sent us home and they quarantined us and sequestered us. For 2 weeks, we were not allowed to talk to anybody. Then they brought us back to the fire department. Janet Reno came into our fire department and told us we could not talk to anyone about the Columbine High School shooting. We couldn't talk about the bombs. We couldn't talk about the 5 murders that happened the week before at Subway, when Klebold and Harris walked into a Subway and killed 5 people the week before the high school shooting. We couldn't talk about the bombs. We couldn't talk about anything we seen, and that we were muzzled. And then they took every single one of us that were at the Columbine High School shooting and separated us and put us in different fire stations on different shifts. Okay? Why would they do that? Because it was a Jefferson County undercover sheriff that sold the guns to Klebold and Harris in an attempt to get people for drug smuggling and drug running, like Operation, the one that Obama did on the border. I can't remember the name of it right now. the one that was all covered up, where the Border Patrol agent was killed from guns that the Obama administration sent to Mexico to the cartel that shot this Border Patrol. So when I say that I believe the government's behind this, that I believe that the vaccine potentially is to limit population, this is where I'm coming from, is from that. And then I also spent 15 years in the military. And I've got deployed 5 times, but if you look at my military records, there's no mention of where I went because of what we did. And this is very common. You know, I was at a Navy SEALs house Sunday, and there was a bunch of Navy SEALs up there, and they do shit all the time that we don't know about. You know, and I was talking to the wife of the wife, she owns a house, the ranch, and I was talking about her husband. And she's like, yeah, he's deployed, and I don't know where he's at. You know, he's now off the grid. So our government does all kind of crazy shit that we don't know about, and then they change it later on. So that's where I'm coming from.
No, I mean, I again, like I would call myself a skeptic. I'm not one to like, I'm not a believing that the vaccine is here to you know, control and limit population, but I also wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Like, nothing would surprise me at that point. Like, the Epstein Island was a big joke and a conspiracy until it wasn't, you know? So you just, again, you never know. I wouldn't say I'm to the point where that's what I believe, but I definitely have my guards up because, you know, again, if you just think about who's in government, it's not, you know, my viewpoint on who mostly is in government, the biggest and brightest and smartest and most talented people are in the private sector because that's where they can earn the most money. That's where they can have the most freedom. Obviously, there are some exceptions in public service and working with the government, but it's a different type of people. It's people that value security and people that, you know, and like, I believe a lot of stuff goes on that necessarily isn't even intentionally because there's like malicious like reasoning behind it. It's just not the brightest people in our community that are these government officials and stuff. And so
I think we're going to see, you know, with the vaccine, I don't think it was designed to limit population growth, but I think they're seeing it and they're like, hey, let's run with it because it's happening and let's run with it. And then speaking of Epstein, I think with the Bill Gates and Melinda divorce, we're going to see a lot. You know, Bill said he never knew who Epstein was, but now they're showing he's been there to the island multiple times. And now we're hearing about his predatory activities, what he was doing with his employees. And Melinda's now hinting around that he used to go to the island a lot with Jeff. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with all of that, you know, when it all comes out.
No, I agree. So back to the Columbine real quick, and then I don't know if you know this about me. I was in the Mandalay Bay the night of the big Vegas shooting, which was a wild experience for me that actually I don't know if I've talked about on this podcast before, so I want to get your thoughts on that. But back to the Columbine thing. So what you're saying is that the kids that were behind this had a plan to like detonate all these bombs too?
Yeah. So if you actually, and I personally read their journal because it was my team that found it. And their plan was this. Their plan was to, and it wasn't just those two, by the way. Those are just the only two that we know about. There's more than just the two. But their plan was to go in and kill the kids, blow up the schools, have kids get in their cars, blow up the cars, go into neighborhoods, kill people throughout the neighborhoods. They had a whole escape plan. They had cars parked. That's why it wasn't just two people. They were going to go in door to door killing people. Then they were going to go to the DIA airport. At the airport, they were going to hijack a plane, take the plane, and basically blow up the plane in midair and crash it. That was their plan. It had nothing to do with bullying. Absolutely nothing.
What was the motivation?
It was about killing. It was, they were, both of them were on the antidepressants that a lot of these serial killers have been on, these mass shooting people have been on. And they were just fucked up people. Because the kids that they killed weren't the ones that bullied them. You know, when they went into the library, into the Christian group, those were the kids that actually defended them. And they killed all them. Not all of them, but they tried to kill them all. And then the kids that were in the cafeteria had nothing to do with bullies. They didn't kill any of the bullies. That was just the narrative that the media grabbed onto. These were just psycho kids. And then add on top of it, the sheriff's department sold them the guns. The sheriff's department, that one of the teachers had read what they planned on doing, because they wrote some of it in a book. They brought in the sheriffs and they interviewed them, and they said, they're just being kids.
Is there any proof, like, is there any like evidence or something with the sheriff's department selling them the guns? Like, where is that? Like, how did you say you heard about that?
Janet Reno came to our fire station. Janet Reno was the attorney general. Come to our fire station through the Clinton administration and said, you guys cannot talk about any of this. It does not exist. And I didn't talk about any of this. It's now been over 20 years. So I don't know. I think the statute of limitations probably expired. But she personally came to our fire station, where it's Station 1 in downtown Littleton, and sat us all down and told us that you'll go to jail if you guys talk about it. And then they separated us all and put us on different shifts in different fire stations. So,
wow. Well,
Fast and Furious. That's what it was called. So the Obama administration had a similar thing where they were selling guns to the cartel, and it was called Fast and Furious through Eric Holder.
And what was the motivation for that, you're saying?
They were selling military-grade weapons to cartel in an attempt to track down the cartel and track them into the United States. Unfortunately, they were murdering thousands of people, including a Border Patrol agent. And that's when it all was exposed, was this Border Patrol agent got killed. They then looked up the serial number, found out it was a military gun, then tracked it down, and it was sold through the Obama administration through Eric Holder, and they had sold thousands of guns to the cartel.
I don't know enough about that situation.
There's a documentary I watched recently. It's called Narcos. You ever watched that on?
I've been wanting to watch it on Netflix, actually. I just haven't.
So there's the show Narcos, which is all about the Colombian cartel and then the Mexican cartel. And then there's a documentary called The Last Narco. And it talks about how the government literally murdered a DEA agent and then covered it up. It's fascinating. And these guys come out, and they're now in their late 70s, and they're like, why are you coming out now? And he goes, look, I'm 77, 78 years old. What are they going to do, kill me? I've lived my life. It's time to share what really happened. And how the government covered up, they killed like 7 Americans as well. The cartel did, and the government just kind of pushed it under the rug. And our own government went in, tortured, and murdered a DEA agent. And the guy that's coming out and exposing all this, Jeremy, is not just some washed up DEA agent. He's the most decorated DEA agent of history. And that's why they chose him to go out and solve this crime. And then when he solved it, they're like, whoa, nope, you can't talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
the most decorated DEA agent.
What I will say about some of the stuff that you're claiming, like, and I mean, Rogan's had these guys, they have their like a new documentary I know that came out a couple years ago. They talk about like UFOs and like things like that from the 50s and 60s that the government in Nevada like was hiding, and that they were involved in all these like unidentified like spacecraft and stuff that was out there. And like I mean, again, what I will say, and I wanted to dive into my experience in Vegas, there's definitely, I am skeptical of trusting the government. And again, it may deep down they may feel like they're doing it for a non-malicious reason, but there is a lot of information that the government definitely keeps under wraps, and there's just more and more stuff coming out that just it makes me more and more skeptical. So what happened, I was in the Mandalay Bay the night of the shooting. Is one of the scariest nights of my life. Me and a friend of mine, Brian Harrington, Kevin Harrington's son, actually, we were walking through the casino floor of the Mandalay Bay. We started seeing security guards running through, and we're like, what the fuck? It was just like, I don't even know how to mentally react to see like armed security guards sprinting through that. I'm like, okay, like I'm a little bit weirded out by that, but maybe someone's just being stupid in the casino. Then we see like fully armed, like with shotguns and assault rifles, like fully like armored, like sprinting through, like SWAT team looking guys, like 10 of them. And we're like, holy shit, I've never experienced that in my life. I mean, they sprinted by me. They were like feet right by me, like just sprinting. We're just like, what the and then like people started screaming in the hotel that there was a shooter. So in my mind, I'm like, there's a loose shooter in the like casino, like with a handgun. So we don't know what's going on. Long story short, we're walking through. There's like an extra taxi at the bottom, and then Brian was going to go to his rental car to get some stuff. That's why I was walking with him in the first place. He's like, hey, I got to grab something out of my car. We haven't caught up in a while. He's like, you just want to walk with me? We go out to the parking lot to get into his rental. The security working in the parking lot was like, hey, I just want to let you guys know, I don't know any details, but I just confirmed there's an active shooter in the building. So me and Brian looked at each other. We were like, what the fuck? So there's a taxi there. I'm like, dude, you just want to bounce, like leave your car here, like bounce, take the taxi. So we hopped in a taxi right there. Everybody else that was part of our party, they were in the top floor, like Kevin and just a bunch of other people, were locked down for nearly 24 hours. But the weird thing is, and I know somebody else that was actually at the concert that night, a friend of mine from Vegas, there's no footage ever that came out of the guy in the building, which the casino has 1 million cameras everywhere. Literally every 5 feet on the ceiling?
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Everywhere. Like maybe even in the rooms, who knows? But and that whole thing got wiped under the rug. And that we moved past that really quick. The investigation moved really quick. We never heard from that. And the point being, and not that I'm saying it's some like government conspiracy thing, but what I am saying is there was obviously some motivation to buy like the because that was bad for the Vegas economy for a while, right? People were scared to travel there. Mm-hmm. Something happened to where someone in power was convinced to just drop that. And then you just never heard from it again. There's very, very little. That's still the biggest mass shooting in U.S. history. I mean, literally hundreds of people were wounded. And that thing just got wiped under the rug. Still, no. And, that's what was crazy to me. Me being there and experiencing and it being so scary. And then I'm just like, nothing ever came from it. There was a little bit of follow-up the week after or whatever, remember, but it just no video footage, the story just kind of disappeared, and that stuff like that happening to me just doesn't give, in my opinion, the government a lot of credibility, because just I don't know, I know I'm ranting now about it, but I just thought it was the strangest thing that I think it was 500 plus total people wounded, literally Think about how many people, 500 plus people were shot. You know how much ammo has to be brought up to this guy's room to make that happen? I mean, there had to have been video footage of multiple trips. There
is video footage of, he had 3 carts full of stuff.
I never saw that. There's video footage of that?
The casino actually helped him take it up to his room. So I was actually there. I was there with Grant Cardone, Elena.
I was there that night too.
Forbes. Yeah. So I had left. My back was killing me for some reason. I don't normally get back pain. And I wanted to go to the concert, but they didn't have any tickets. So then Grant had texted me, said, hey, since you can't get tickets, come up and hang out with us. So Michelle and I went up, hung out with Grant and Elena and Forbes and then everybody else in the room. Were you in that room that night?
I was, yeah. I don't know if I think we maybe briefly knew each other back then. I had like just joined VA or something.
Yeah.
I think it was, we may have known each other loosely, but there was there's probably 100 people in that room.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And like Francesca was in there, and I didn't even recognize her when I was in there. Genovese and some other people, but my back just started hurting really bad. And I was like, I'm going to go home. So I left. By the time I got to the parking lots when everything started going down, but I was already in my car leaving. But what's interesting to that is there is footage. And the reason it wasn't a big deal was because he was a high roller there. He was a VIP. And they recently came out with what went down with it. And it was not this, they didn't come out with this publicly. But when a VIP has issues at a casino, there is a specific special phone number for the casino security to call. So if a VIP or celebrity comes in, causes a problem, they call a special phone number. The police department, the sheriff comes in and they handle it, and it's not through 911 regular dispatch. So because this guy was on the VIP floor in a suite and a VIP, when someone called it in, they accidentally called this special phone number, which is why it took so long for someone to respond. They didn't call 911. So that security guard, when he called it in, he called the special cell phone number of the sheriff or whoever it is. So each casino has a dedicated line for celebrities.
Is that to keep stuff private, or what are you saying the reason for that is? Okay.
Yes, that is to keep it private. So, if a celebrity comes in and there's a girl found in his room, or they find a bunch of drugs, they can call a special number to handle it, sweep it under the rug, and it never hits the media. So this is a known thing in the casino world.
Really? So
they called the wrong phone number. So, and it came out in the lawsuit. So if you want to read about it, you can actually, if you go in and can find the lawsuit stuff, if it's not sealed now, because they paid all the victims. There's a lot of money that went out to them. But I remember going to Mandalay Bay afterwards because, my office was not too far from there. And I was down there almost every day with affiliates and partners and stuff on the Strip. And man, it was a ghost town for a year. For a long time. So
the first time I went back to Mandalay Bay, I remember it just being so creepy. Like it just, the energy I felt, I still feel like a weird energy going into Mandalay Bay. Like I went there whenever the last time I think it was February of 2020. I think it was right before everything shut down. I think I actually was at the Mandalay Bay. I was definitely in Vegas, and yeah, it'll always feel weird to me because that was a really, really interesting night.
Yep. Man, we went all over the place.
But yeah, I mean, I am hopeful that we just continue to. I would love to get to a place. To be clear, I'm not anti-government. I would love to get to a place where we just have full transparency with our government and say, hey, mistakes can be made, but definitely even some of the Epstein stuff we were just talking about. I mean, if that, which I'm excited, maybe for lack of a better term, but I think I'm excited, and there's a lot of people's that careers and reputations could be really damaged if that's uncovered. Really, people that we look at as idols and that we look up to, and I think it could be painful short term, but we definitely, just because somebody's super wealthy and they have government power or whatever it is, that's the stuff I think most citizens can agree. These are the people that can't be having these passes anymore. So I'm hopeful that whatever her face is that's in that's captive, that actually has some information, and apparently there's video footage and a lot of stuff that still could be uncovered. I'm hopeful that that information is released, because I think that's the first step to healing and starting to build more and more trust with our government. Because I would love to get to the point where, government, I think, should have a limited role in this country, but I would love to have a great trusting relationship, because there's a lot of countries in Europe that have a trusting relationship with their government, you know?
I think it's going to be tough. I mean, if you've heard of overstock.com,
Mm-hmm.
do you know the CEO has been hiding in Asia?
I don't.
Yeah. So he did a video. I was in Mexico. He's either when I was in Mexico or the Costa Rica. I've been in 4 countries so far this year in the middle of COVID, which has been great because no one's around. No, I was in Costa Rica when it first came out. He did a video and he exposed with Epstein. Epstein was killed by the CIA. They actually went in, closed out, put the guards, they drugged the guards, put him to sleep. He's got proof of the lab results from the blood work from the guards. And then they went in and, murdered Epstein, made it look like a hanging. That's why these guys just fell asleep. A lot of people thought they were lying, but they had, I can't remember the name of the drug, but you can aerosol it. So they believe that the CIA, dark state, went in, pumped it in through the HVAC system, knocked the guys out, went in, did their thing, purged the records, kind of like a Mission Impossible thing. And Mission Impossible movie, but he's got documentation of the lab results, and he's hiding. The CEO, billionaire of Overstock, is hiding in Asia from the CIA or the dark state that's trying not to get killed because of stuff that he knows.
Well, with the CIA, and again, like this is, I'm not saying this is the case, but again, there's no one can look at that Epstein case and think, he killed himself legitimately. Maybe, right? But very unlikely. What would the government's motivation be for this? Just the people that are in government? Is that?
Yeah, you got Bill Clinton, that used to hang out on the island, and who knows who else used to hang out down there.
I mean, English royalty, obviously.
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah.
We got other billionaires and other people, that hang out. And look at our friend Pippa with some of the stuff that she's doing for the sex trafficking and with her AI software, tracking down predators. So, I don't know, cover it all up. I mean, why doesn't Hollywood, why do they go after conservatives and they don't ever talk about all the sex trafficking through Hollywood? None of that comes up.
It did briefly with like the Harvey Weinstein stuff, which is good. I mean, I think everybody should be treated equal in that regard. But yeah, it definitely seems to get there's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to social justice for sure, though. I mean, the obvious one that I see all the time, and I do tend to agree with, is the NBA, which again, I live in Orlando. I had season tickets for the Magic. I still am not as big as I was, but I'm still a basketball fan. But, in the NBA standing up for social justice, which is, their right to do as an entity, and as individuals, the players can cheer for whatever they want, speak about whatever they want. That's their First Amendment right. But China is a big market for them, and China makes a lot of their products as well, and China is the opposite of progressive when it comes to social justice. And there's a lot of hypocrisies, and that China isn't just hey, people are looked at weird if they identify as transgender, or they're the government is there's a lot of very, very strict rules about what you can do as an individual, what you can do in business. There's a lot of people that go missing. There's actual, reports of concentration camps, and just some crazy shit that definitely should be under question from these people. And it's wiped under the rug. I mean, China is arguably, if not the NBA's, biggest market, or a gigantic source of revenue, and they don't want to attack them. And South Park made this episode about it too, because they talk about, and that's where you got to give South Park credit. They attack both sides. They'll attack right and left, stupid stuff on both sides they attack. But Disney, same thing. They criticize Disney's hypocrisy and how they bow down to China. So yeah, it is. There are hypocrisies, but again, the good news is there's more mediums like this, more mediums like podcasts. Like I think Rogan has been great on that. He just, not that everybody Rogan has on is right about everything, but at least he has different viewpoints and he has conversations with people all over the spectrum, which is what we need as humans, is just different perspectives, and we can make our own decision. I have one question about that I wanted to get to that I meant to ask earlier, but I was excited to ask. So student debt, I know, is a big topic transition, as you can see, but I just wanted to make sure we got to this. Is there any way to leverage credit to pay off student debt and then file bankruptcy? Like, are there ways that can actually get people, because student debt traditionally, you can't file bankruptcy and get rid of that debt. That's the only debt that doesn't go away in a bankruptcy, right? Is the student debt the only one, or is there something else?
Yes and no. That's partially true. It's partially true because you cannot file bankruptcy on federal student loans, but you can file bankruptcy on private student loans. And the banks know this. So one of the first things they do when you get out of college is they want to consolidate all your student loans into one federally backed student loan. And now you can't file bankruptcy on it. Is there ways to file bankruptcy on it? Yes, but you're committing fraud if you are doing this on purpose, and that is getting lines of credit through your business. So business lines of credit, business loans, business credit cards, personal loans, personal credit cards, and then paying off the student loans and then filing bankruptcy on those. That is one way to do it. It is fraud. Is there other ways to reduce the debt without filing bankruptcy? Yeah, there's lots of ways. In fact, inside of Fortress University, we teach how to pay off a 30-year mortgage in 7 to 10 years without making extra payments, without changing your lifestyle. We teach how to pay off a student loan. So a 20-year student loan, you can pay that off in 5 to 8 years without changing your lifestyle if you simply change where your money's deposited. Most people, they go to work, they get paid, that money goes into a checking account, and the bank then leverages that money in their checking and savings account through fractional reserve banking, and they pay you nothing. So there's a way to actually have the banks pay you 10 to 15% interest on your checking accounts. And then there's a way to eliminate 70% of the interest charged on car loans, student loans, boat loans, any type of loan, including your mortgage. So there is ways to do it.
Yeah, just to be clear,
my course it's a 6-hour course teaching you, because it's simple, but it's complicated.
Who's the target demo for Fortress U?
Anybody that wants to learn about money, credit, taxes, or investments. So, it's one thing we can talk about COVID and Epstein and the elites and the politicians, and it can get really depressing. The one thing that we have control over is our own personal finances, our own credit, our own investments, and our own taxes. And if we can control what we're doing with our own money, we can change policies. We can change things through what we do, because we can change our family, which then changes our neighborhood, our cities, our counties, and it grows. It's not trickle down, it's trickle up.
I like that. And I agree. And I thought we just dove into these topics because I thought they were interesting, and we just went down a unique rabbit hole. But I agree. I mean, I'm a big believer. No matter what you hear on the news or what people tell you, there's unbelievable amounts of opportunity in this country, and there's a lot of opportunity to change your life and earn more income. And part of that is, being smart with your credit, leveraging debt, not paying too much in taxes. Building wealth for you and your family is how you can make impact in the world ultimately. Jordan Peterson's big about that. He's like, clean up your own house, basically. Get your own house in order before you criticize the world, right? And getting your own house in order gives you a lot of opportunity to make big impact. Final question, just 2 things, basic things the average person can do that are really simple to improve their credit?
The number one thing that you can do to improve your credit score is managing your credit cards properly. And in order to manage your credit card properly, you have to have credit cards. So first thing is you need to know that how important credit cards are. It's about 70%, if not more, of your credit score is based on your credit cards. So you need to have at least 3 credit cards open and used every single month. When you use those credit cards, you don't want to spend more than 5%. So if you got $1,000 credit limit, don't spend more than $50 in order to have the highest credit score possible. Okay. Think about credit scores like a tank of gas. And I think you have a Tesla, right?
I did. Not anymore.
Yeah, you did. Okay. All right. So whether it's a battery or an EV or gas-powered, fossil fuel powered, your car doesn't care if it's a quarter tank, half tank, or full tank. When you're driving around, it doesn't care, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't make it function any better. It's similar to credit scores. It doesn't matter if your credit score today is a 600 and tomorrow it's a 700 and the next day it's a 500. It doesn't matter. It only matters when you're going to apply for credit, when you're going to get a new credit card, a new car loan, a mortgage, or in June and December. Why June and December? That's when your car insurance companies will pull your credit to determine how much they're going to charge you in car insurance, renter's insurance, mortgage insurance, health insurance, and life insurance. So, but for the most part, throughout the year, your credit score doesn't matter. So you can, if you got a credit card and you want the points, max it out and get as many points as you want. But if you're trying to have the highest credit score possible because you're going to use that credit score, 5% on the credit card. No more than 5%, no more than 1%. If you do not use that credit card, you will lose the points that are given to you for using the credit card properly. So let's say you have 3 credit cards, you don't use them for 3 months. You could see a 100-point reduction in your credit score because you're not using them. And FICO thinks that they got closed and the bank just didn't update to the credit bureaus yet. And so they'll lower your credit score because they think they're closed. So that's why you want to use them on a regular basis. And I'm not saying to pay interest. I'm not saying to go into debt to have good credit. I'm saying put your electric bill on it. Gas, sewer, water, car insurance, cell phone insurance, groceries, things that you are buying and purchasing and using every month, put that on the credit card. And by putting that on the credit card, it has activity, and then you pay it off in full every month, and there's no interest. So the number one thing that you can do to increase your credit score is to properly manage your 3 or more credit cards every single month.
No, that was good. That was beneficial. I lied. One last question: how much does Fortress U? What does it cost, or what's the investment? Let's see.
So the investment for Fortress University for everything, all 25 courses, is $19.97. So just under $2,000, and you can pay that with credit card, PayPal. You can pay in crypto if you want. I'll take your crypto if you have it. And then we also have financing. With our financing, we report it to all 3 credit bureaus, which then will potentially has a positive impact on your score. But because there's a lot of business-related stuff in there, it is 100% tax deductible for business owners. And if you're not a business owner, we have a course in there on how to create your own home-based small business so it can be tax deductible. And then ultimately, if you apply the strategies in there, you easily will reduce your taxes by $2,000 your very first year. So it's $2,000 for Fortress University. That includes lifetime credit repair if you need it. And it is lifetime access to Fortress University for that one-time fee. We do break down those courses. So if you say, hey, I don't want the whole thing, I only want how to pay off my mortgage, that's $997. Or you can just have it all for $19.97.
Yeah, no, let's definitely chat offline, and we have a couple of right-leaning e-commerce brands that we're scaling, and we could possibly push it as an affiliate. So definitely down to talk about that. And you did help me with my ID theft situation a few years ago too. I don't know if you remember, but you were super helpful.
I do.
I still, by the way, I would recommend everybody publicly to just freeze your credit, because I had 2 cars, car insurance, multiple credit cards, cell phones, apartments, traffic tickets, parking ticket, like you name it. I still got like an email or a mail about something like a month ago, and this was over 2 years ago for my ID theft thing. And I have my credit frozen now, and I haven't had any issues since. So, but you were a big help. So thank you for that. That was a giant pain in the ass. I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemies.
It is a huge pain in the ass. There's, it's back to this thing with credit bureau. There's no such thing as a credit bureau. It's a credit reporting agency, but we have certain terms that we've just adopted. Identity theft. Nobody shoved a gun in your face and said, give me your identity, and stole it. What they did is they committed fraud. We just call it identity theft. It is one of the most simplest things to fix, but it's a pain in the ass. It's not super expensive. It's a little bit of money, for less than $20, depending on how much fraud is committed. But most of the time you're spending it on certified mail, and a credit report. But it's a pain in the ass. We just had another BA member after this last BA. She called me the next day and she's like, someone just hacked my identity. And what was funny is at BA, every single time I tell people, freeze your identity, add fraud alerts, do this, this, and this. And then the next day she's like, yeah, I should have listened to you yesterday because someone just hacked me.
Yeah. Though not, so I don't know if I ever told you this. I was talking to a state of Florida detective about this because the total value ended up being over $100,000 in stolen assets, because it was like 2 cars, which were like 80 grand of it. So that was the large chunk, and then a bunch of other stuff. But this higher level detective got involved because it was $100K plus, and I don't even know what happened at the end of it. But based on that dollar amount, they potentially face some really, really big prison time. I think he said 100,000 was the point where it's some 15 years plus potentially, or something, like some crazy amount. I don't even know what happened, but yeah, I had Ronnie from my team. It probably was only a couple $100 in true hard cost, but I remember there was 18 total counts of between cars, credit cards open, new cell phone plans, all this stuff. It was 18. So it was 18 letters. We had to attach the letter from the Orlando Sheriff's Department saying that this was ID. It was sent certified. I mean, it was literally $200 in postage, 18 separate packets of information. So we faxed, mailed, and emailed 18 separate companies to get most of it removed. I still think there's some of it on my credit, but it was such small stuff that it didn't really affect it. Obviously, the main things I wanted off were the cars. I had to be on calls with the banks because the car, oh my God. The car company was involved that sold them the car, but then also the banks gave them the loan. So I had to talk to the car company and the banks. It was wild, but we made it. We made it through, but yeah, you were super helpful in that, so thank you.
There's I can't say his name because he's a very, very prominent motivational speaker, and he'd reached out to me a couple years ago. Someone had purchased 22 cars in his name at the same dealership in North Carolina. 22 cars. And so they ended up going after the dealership because it was kind of an inside job. But yeah, most of the time they don't even do any investigation on this stuff, on the little fraud. But it can be, if you didn't know somebody like me, it was already bad, but it would have been a freaking nightmare for you. At least you had a path to go down. It was still a pain in the ass.
Yeah, and for everybody to understand at the simplest level, you have to personally reach out to every company involved and prove that that wasn't you and you were a victim of fraud. So they will have tons of questions, because a bank's not going to just be like, oh yeah, we're going to just forgive this loan, first call, no big deal. Like there's like an approval process for this. So I mean, it was like multiple calls. I was like, they would forward me to their like different departments. I mean, it ended up being crazy. And it's stuff that I was like, Ronnie, can you just take care of this? Like, they want to talk to me. Obviously, it's an identity theft thing. So, super thankful. But grateful for our time together, man. It was a really, really fascinating conversation. It was one of my favorites to date. So we'll definitely chat soon. And if we can help drive some traffic to Fortress U, I'm down to give it a shot.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you for listening to Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player so you get updated when new episodes are live. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support is to leave a 5-star review and share the podcast with people in your life that you feel would benefit from these types of discussions. Visit openlyoutspoken.com for additional details on the show. Find out how to connect with Jeremy on social media and learn more information about Jeremy's personal and business life. We'll see you next time.